Welcome to the first 2022 Lunch and Learn for the Arizona Peer and Family Career Academy on motivational interviewing. Thank you all for joining us. We are so excited to have you. Just a few disclaimers. I am working from home, so if you happen to end up hearing my amazing 8-year-old or any other background noise, that is why. I also work with an umbrella cockatoo, which is a very large parrot in my office, so occasionally she makes herself known. Hopefully that won't happen for this training, but it does from time to time happen. So I always like to make sure everyone knows if she does make herself known, that is what that background noise is. We are recording this so that way we can post it online for anyone who's unable to join us today. And if we do hear any background noise, we will be muting you just to make sure that we don't have any distractions for our other participants today. We are so glad that you joined us, and we will be going over motivational interviewing. First, I'm sure many of you are familiar by this point in time, as most of us have been working virtually, but just in case, for those of you that aren't familiar with Zoom, we are utilizing Zoom today as our platform, so you can mute and unmute your video. I would love to see your faces. It definitely helps to not be presenting to a whole bunch of black screens. So please feel free to share your video with us. We'd love to see you as I'm sharing, and mute and unmute yourself at the end. Hopefully we'll have some time for questions, but please feel free to post some questions in the chat as you go through. There is a chat button. I will also have some polls throughout this Lunch and Learn as well, and so you'll be able to respond to those as they pop up on your screen. With that, I'd love and please introduce yourself in the chat. Share a little bit about your name, your title, your organization, your Lunch and Learn. So I will start. My name is Hayley Winterberg. I am the Executive Director of the Arizona Peer and Family Career Academy. And the icebreaker question of today is, what change do I plan to make in 2022? So the big change I plan to make in 2022 is get more movement. I can easily get trapped in the day-to-day work of my desk. And, I really love the work that I do, but I will find at the end of the day that I did not move at all. And then I'm like, oh, why am I really sore and achy? And so I want to get more movement into my day. And so I want to just try to get up and move around more. So that is my goal. So I'd love to hear yours. So please post in the chat. I've got an example down here. Who are you? Who do we have joining us today? So share your name, your title, your organization, and the icebreaker question. All right, we've got Betty. Oh, Betty, we go way back. Yes, time to carve out for exercise again. I'm with you. Christopher Gonzalez with Hope Lives, along with Jackie, Courtney, and Nancy with Hope Lives. Welcome, Hope Lives. So excited to have Hope Lives here. Woohoo! Molly Quayle, Program Administrator for AZCA. Me time hour. Oh, me time is so important. Oh, we've got Voc Rehabilitation in the building. How exciting. And Ability 360. I'm so excited to have so many more of you guys here with us, some amazing experts in the room. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, Cope Mesquite as well, Peer Support Wellness. Yes, thank you all so much for joining us. So excited to have you. With that, I'm going to post our first poll, and love to have you share what your role is. What is your experience in our system? Please, if you are a peer support specialist, a family support specialist, a supervisor, a social worker, a counselor, a general community member, let us know. Who do we have joining us today in our Zoom world? Training, my word for 2022 is responsibility. I like it. Responsibility, it's so important. We've got Leilani from the Haven. Yes, taking classes for your degree. Education is so important. All right, we've got some really diverse individuals here joining us. I'm going to share these results. We've got some peer supports, family supports, supervisors, social workers, community members. Welcome, welcome everyone. So excited to have you all here. Well, I'm going to share a little bit about who the Peer and Family Career Academy is. Sure, you might be wondering, okay, who are these people? Why are they doing a lunch and learn? So our mission is to inspire recovery and wellness through professional development and continuing education in order to equip emerging leaders and strengthen the peer and family support workforce. So we exist to support peer and family support specialists and the providers that provide that specialized service type. And how do we do that? By offering special trainings. And I'm going to post another poll here about to see who in this room has taken one of our trainings. But the trainings that we offer, and this lunch and learn is just an example of an abbreviated training that we plan on offering here in 2022. But one is forensic support, breaking down the barriers for those who have criminal justice experience. We have a self-care course. We have one on opioid use disorder and that crisis that really is impacting, in 2022, in 2021, there was over 100,000 lives lost due to the opioid use crisis. We really want to make sure that we have an impact on that and that individuals are trained on how to support individuals in their journey of recovery. Abilities, differences, and inclusion. And so how do we support individuals that have unique assets and support in that system navigation for those in the DDD, developmental disabilities population? Effective advocacy. How do you, have that fine line between being a strong advocate in our community and being a professional? And motivational leadership. How do you take your work and being a peer support specialist and family support specialist and become a really solid supervisor? So I see some of you have taken our trainings and some of you not yet. So I look forward to changing that. So hopefully some of you will be able to start taking our trainings in the future. We are offering them regularly. And we'll talk more about that later. We also have our peer-to-peer coaching program. And this is offered for those that are employed in our Arizona system that are peer or family support specialists, and we offer that as a group or one-to-one coaching available. The group is on the 2nd or 4th Wednesdays of every month. Everything is shared, that is completely confidential. It is kept sacred in that coaching relationship, but it's important to note that it's not job coaching, it's not counseling, and it's not employment counseling. We're really here to be an opportunity to listen to what is happening and support our workforce. So now that we've shared who the Arizona Peer and Family Career Academy is, we're going to jump into what you really came here for, which is skills on motivational interviewing and the stages of change. So our learning objectives today is to increase the knowledge of the stages of change theory, expand awareness of the theory and the practice of motivational interviewing, and enhance the ability to effectively utilize motivational interviewing in your work. Yes, thank you, Maria, for joining. Maria joined as well as I saw a few others in the chat. They were in a training earlier in a training with me this morning for forensics. So excited that they decided to join me for this lunch and learn. They weren't sick of hearing me, I guess. And so what is motivational interviewing and what is stages of change? Those are some big topics right off the get-go. And we want to make sure to cover what is that. So stages of change is 6 steps a person progresses through on their journey from thinking about the need to change to eventual maintenance of new constructed behaviors. So it's really about that process of change of saying, I don't really have a problem to, yes, I had a problem and I've made some changes in my life and those are what I have to do to maintain and make differences in my life. And then there's motivational interviewing, and that is a collaborative, person-centered form of guiding to elicit and strengthen the motivation to change. It moves one through that stages of change. So instead of saying, hey, buddy, you need to change, it's really supporting someone in recognizing their own need to change and helping them recognize and really guide through their own process of change. And so what does the research say about change is that, one, it increases someone's ability to take their medication more regularly. We know that it can decrease chronic pain. We know that it increases the consumption of fruits and vegetables. I know I need to eat more fruits and vegetables, that's for sure. It can support individuals that are diabetic and decrease their A1C number. It can support with smoking cessation and reduce the amount that they are smoking. It can improve their weight. And so it's really an amazing tool that can be used for a variety of different health impacts. And I know we often talk about it in the behavioral health field, but it really can be used across the healthcare system. And it's not something that's just limited to just behavioral health. It really does have both a behavioral health and a physical health component. That's something I want everyone to be aware of. And there's research behind it. It's not something that the PFCA created. This is something that is research backed and is really evidence-based. And I've got this fun little video to kind of talk about the difference. It's not about the nail.
It's just, there's all this pressure.
Let me turn up the volume here.
You know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't...
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can't go on? We can work it out.
So I hope you can see in that lighthearted way how many times as we have had individuals support us and they try to go in with fixing it, right? They think that they know what we need. They think they know what the problem is, and they just want to fix it. And when we are wanting to utilize the skills of motivational interviewing, that is not what the goal is. We do not want to go in with a fix it attitude. We really want to do what she was asking for and sit back and listen first. Motivational interviewing is empathetic, it's non-confrontational, it's encouraging, it's non-judgmental, it's supportive, and most importantly, it's empowering. He was not doing any of those things, right? He was focused entirely on the nail. And in motivational interviewing, well, we might know what that change might need to be. We might already have those ideas. It's not in our job, it's not our role to see and to force upon that. We want them to be able to see that for themselves. You know, so how can he ask questions? How can he support her in seeing that really the problem is the nail in her forehead for herself versus him telling her that it's a nail. And yes, this video is used in a lot of different trainings. I absolutely love it because I really think it can make a lot of different points. But I think it just coins in, let's not be the fixer of the problem. The goal of motivational interviewing is to increase motivation for change through the ambivalence and dissonance that an individual might have. Ambivalence, a state of mind in which a person has coexisting but conflicting feelings, thoughts, and actions about something. You know, maybe they do and they don't, right? They might realize, hey, this is something I might want to change, but I don't want to change. And that is entirely normal in the experience. And dissonance, it is the psychological distress due to that ambivalence, right? When you have that good cop, bad cop within yourself, and that is an ongoing struggle that one might have. And that is, again, a part of that normal process in the motivational interviewing process and the stages of change. You're going to have this dissonance of the, I do, but I don't. And that creates that recipe for change. That dissonance, the ambivalence, and the motivation is the recipe that equals change. We want to support that individual's awareness and commitment towards action. So what are those 6 stages of change? So it starts with that pre-contemplation. They have no intention of changing the behavior. Maybe they don't even realize that there is a problem yet. And so they often don't even come towards treatment. They don't see that there is anything going on yet. And then there's the contemplation stage. There's aware that this problem exists, but they're not really committed to action, right? And so when you're in that contemplation stage, how that's going to show up is, I went to put on my favorite jeans. They didn't fit. Do you think they shrunk in the dryer? Or is it because I'm eating out more? Maybe the friend is like, you and John seem to be going out for fast food quite a bit. The individual, but I don't supersize my food like John does, right? They're just not really committed to making an action. They recognize, hey, my jeans not fitting, but they're not willing to do anything about it. Little less of a serious example there. Preparation, intent on taking action to address the problem. So more serious steps here. So maybe they've actually started to sign up for services. They have engaged in those treatment models. And then there is action, active modification of the behavior. So those are individuals who have signed up, they have begun, they've completed their intake, they are receiving those services. So they are engaging in that model of change. Then there is maintenance, and that is sustained change. The new behavior replaces the old. So that is that ongoing process. And while I prefer to use a different word than relapse, the term that is often used when referencing the stage of change is relapse. So I'm going to train the word relapse, but I want you to really pay attention to the word fallback and recognize that relapse is a natural process of the stage of change, and it's not good or bad, and that we want to learn from each relapse. So just because an individual might relapse in their change, they might relapse from substances, they might relapse in whatever that change might be, right? On our less serious example of eating too much fast food, that can completely happen, right? And so it's just that falling back into old patterns of behaviors. And how do we learn from that and restart our stage of change and jump in at whatever point we can? So let's make it real. I want you to pick a change that you're considering and keep it in mind as we are discussing it, this training today. What stage of change are you in with that? So I'm going to post that now. As you consider the change that you have in your mind, what stage of change are you in? Are you in the pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance or fall back. I think this is a perfect training for 4 days into January of 2022, right? We've all been talking about New Year's resolutions. Hopefully everyone is thinking about those still. Hopefully we haven't already broken our resolutions 4 days in. All right, we're pretty split. We've got a few that are in contemplation. That's our highest one. We've got a lot of people that are thinking about making that change. And then we've got quite a few that are in that preparation and action stage, some that are already in maintenance. So glad to hear it. Thank you all for participating. Pre-contemplation. Really the barriers of this is that they're unaware often as an individual. There might be no connection to the risk. And really the strategies as a helper is how do we increase the awareness? How do we support in educating the individual and examine the discrepancies, right? With the life that they share that they want to live and the goals that they have and where they're currently at. And how do we point those out with making one feel bad about themselves? And so stages of change model, the participant might be overwhelmed. They might be feeling really hopeless about it. They might not be feeling in control. They might have little or no fear of the consequences, or they might really minimize harmful consequences. They might really feel that this isn't that big of a deal. And it's our job as we're utilizing motivational interviewing to come in as non-judgmental. We want to display that empathy. We want to listen and clarify and really identify what is that individual's goals. Focus on what do they want to accomplish and focus on safety and reducing harm. We want to provide information. That is our goal when we identify someone that's in pre-contemplation. Let's provide them information and let's ensure that they are safe and explain that we want them to be safe. Let's not focus on removing, right? Let's do a harm reduction approach and ensure that we are removing issues of harm if we possibly can and increase that individual's safety. Contemplation. What are some of the barriers? They're ambivalent to it. There might be a lack of effective efficacy. Whoa, that was a hard word for me today for some reason, right? They might lack that self-confidence that they are able to make the change. You know, they might just be like, this is the way things are. And some strategies for that is really examine what are their values, learn what is important to them in the whole picture. What's their education, their relationship, their family, their job? Weigh the pros and cons and look at how do we help develop more pros to making a change than focusing on the cons of the change. How do we help navigate that with the individual? And the goal and the strategy is to help get to the heart of the ambivalence and begin tipping the balance towards that positive change and develop and utilize the extrinsic and intrinsic incentive for change. We really want them to start to see the reason why they would want to make a change, right? Again, we're not pushing them to make a change that they don't want. We want them to see the change for themselves. In contemplation, acknowledge, right, that the problem exists. That's when, in this stage, they're going to say, yeah, I recognize that there's a problem, but I'm really struggling with changing that problem, you know, and they may not understand what the cause is or the possible solution. And they also are recognizing that this is going to take time. And they might be really hesitant because of the time that it's going to take. And it's going to be really important for the helper to build trust and rapport during this time. You want to assess how long have they been contemplating making the change? Have they tried to make this change in the past? What worked? What didn't work during that time? And really focus on the positive and make sure to give accurate information. As a peer and family support specialist, this is when I often will utilize my own personal experience too on what worked and didn't work for me if they're open for that. This is that opportunity to share if that individual's open for it, and making sure you're doing so with appropriate level of disclosure if that person is open to it and wants to hear it. We don't want to just dump on them as well. And how do we increase their confidence? You know, when they say, hey, I didn't use this morning, celebrate that. You know, maybe it's not about the whole day for that individual just yet. Let's celebrate the little steps. Or, hey, I didn't eat McDonald's this week. Hallelujah, yes. Now, maybe tomorrow they go and get it, but let's celebrate the little steps and build up their confidence that they can make the change, and encourage them, build up their ability that they can do it. Point out the things that they are really good at. Then we have determination and preparation. And the barriers of this is they might have insufficient options or lack of knowledge. They may not even be aware of what all of their options are. They may not know what resources are available to them. They might have a fear of failure, rejection. They might be worried about change or pitfalls. And some strategies to combat this is strengthen their commitment and provide them with effective resources. Make sure that they are aware of all of their options. We want to encourage, reaffirm, and develop their coping strategies to provide good quality care to that individual. And in the preparation model, for the participant, motivation for change involves into a plan of action. We want to gather the knowledge necessary for the change. We want to support them to set goals with realistic timelines, right? For example, someone shared earlier, they want to get their degree. We want to set the goal of, I'm going to get my degree by the end of 2022. That's not going to be a realistic timeline. However, depending on their degree, maybe I'm going to get my degree. Your associate's degree could take 2 years. So by the end of 2024, I will complete my degree. Or maybe, you know, hey, I'm only going to be able to do part-time. So by 2025, I plan on completing this degree. And so setting those realistic timelines with someone so that way they can feel prepared, and making sure that they don't get overwhelmed and get stuck. Break it down into those smaller pieces. And maybe, you know, especially when you're working on a really big goal, a really big change, break it down. Like, for example, with my college degree, I could not take on, hey, I'm going to get my master's degree. That was too big of a task. Instead, I had to break it down class by class by class. And I just checked off every single class. I was, phew, another one down. All right, another one down. And I just had a countdown of how many weeks were left. And that helped me get through that very long degree process. And eventually I got it. And then I got another one. And for the helper, really support and what is that participant's goals. You notice how the theme throughout is paying attention to what are their goals and making sure that we are adapting the plan as we need, right? Change plan that can be acceptable, accessible, and effective. We want to make sure that this plan is going to work for that individual, that it is something they want to do, that it's going to be effective, and make sure that we also are having conversations about what might be some barriers and triggers in that preparation. What challenges do they already anticipate they might come against? And what are the supports and options that they can have to overcome those? And then we come into the action stage of change and the barriers. overconfidence and ability. So sometimes we can really be like, oh yeah, I've got this, no problem. And another barrier in action is sometimes things happen that we don't plan for. A crisis might occur. Life is unexpected. I don't know about you, but life has thrown me some unexpected curveballs from time to time. And that's going to happen with the individuals we support too. So our strategies as helpers to support that is to make sure that we are providing consistent support. And if we know we're not going to be that consistent support, making sure we are connecting them to consistent support individuals. How do we connect them to natural supports to be that consistent support when we do step away? Focus on those successes, making sure they're engaged with treatment and services and building a crisis plan, including crisis plans for, hey, if this change doesn't work out, what are we going to do about that? What is your plan? We want to make sure that they feel empowered to implement the plan, that they don't feel like this is our plan, that they recognize that this is their plan, that they have the time and energy to do it, that they are sharing this with individuals, and that they begin to modify their behavior and utilize this plan. We want to be careful in our listening. We want to affirm them. We want to make sure that we are listening and providing opportunities to revise that plan as needed. There's going to be times that we might need to adjust and support them in identifying when that plan might need to be adjusted. And action is not change. It's only one step in the process. Right? So we want to make sure that we recognize just because someone is taking action, that's not the change itself. And then maintenance. This is another step of the change process. So it's that final step. So we've taken the action and we've begun to make that change. Now we have to actually maintain those changed behaviors. The barriers can be unfulfilling, and it can be lack of competing reinforcers. Once you've made that change, it can be really hard to see the benefit because you're just living that day in and day out. So as a helper, it's going to be really important that we affirm the changes made, that we support developing those rewards, and that we support in finding activities to replace maybe those more challenging behaviors that they had in the past. We want to make sure that they are working to engage what is working well for them in this maintenance stage, and maybe identifying what might be some trigger points and how do we make plans to support in that. And as a helper, it's so important that we carefully listen during this time. It'd be so easy to be like, oh, they're doing so well, I don't need to worry about them anymore. But we do still need to engage with our individuals in their maintenance stage, because you just never know. We want to support when there is unexpected times of stress. I have someone very close to me who experienced an unexpected loss. One of the very first things that I did was support her and say, okay, you've been doing really, really well in your recovery for a long time. Let's make sure that stays the same. That was a hard conversation to have, right? She was focused on her loss, absolutely. But I wanted to make sure we looked at the bigger picture for a long time with her, so that way she didn't lose so much more in this process as well, right? And we had to identify what are going to be some triggers for her that might cause a potential relapse during this time. How can I support her during that? What does that support look like? And it was a very powerful moment for me. And I'm so glad that I was allowed to be a part of that process. And it took for me to be a very careful listener to what did she need. It wasn't what I thought she was going to need. It was very different. And then if relapse does happen or a fallback happens in those, how do we really discover the strategies and recognize that it's a normal part of the recovery process? I like to say recovery is a journey. It's not a destination. And whether that's recovery from behavioral health, whether that is recovery from substances, whether that is I'm eating too much junk, right? The recovery can look different for different people. I strongly believe in that, right? When we're talking about stages of change, relapse is the word that they're looking at. So it's a lot bigger than that. But how do we support that individual and getting back into that stage of change quicker every time? And how do we discover the triggers that led to that relapse and create a plan to avoid that in the future? We want to provide that support and services based on the change. And how do we support them through the process and not make them feel bad about it, not make it a negative situation? It just is what it is, and we continue forward. We want to make sure that they realize that this is an opportunity to learn, and then it's an opportunity to tweak the plan that they already have, that this is a part of the cycle of change. We don't want to make anybody feel bad for the fact that they fell backwards in their stage of change. It is a normal part of the process, and we want to honor that. So I want to do another quick poll with everybody and see what motivated you for change. I think we'll all find we all have different motivations for change. All right, I'm going to share those results now. So the very top one was myself. Absolutely. I think that is the power of motivational interviewing, right? Is that motivation often has to come from ourselves. You know, it can also come from health. That was another very top one. But if you notice, the scores that were lower were other people. And so that's why we want to utilize motivational interviewing, because this is our opportunity to support the individual to find that motivation within themselves. Because there's nothing that we can do or say as an individual, as a helper, to force upon change anybody. We really want to support the individual in finding that change for themselves. And I'd love, as I am going through the next part of the training, for everyone to share in the chat what barriers kept you from making changes in your life. Barriers are a natural part of the change process. So what barriers kept you from making change? I know for me, it is just my comfort zone, and what I was used to was a big barrier every time I'm making a change. Yes, fear of the unknown, that can be a big change, a big barrier. So now the more practical part, what are the principles and techniques? So there's 4 fundamental processes of motivational interviewing. There's engaging, which is really focused on that person-centered style, empathy, and there's an acronym called OARS that I'll go into a little bit more. Then there's focusing, which is guiding the individual towards that behavior that they see as important. There is agenda setting and mapping, a bubble chart, and important questions. There is evoking, drawing out a client's intrinsic motivation and their own ideas for change. And there's planning, that bridge to change. And that's identifying those key questions, assisting with change plans, and revisiting those change plans. And so that engaging person-centered style is we want to look at solar, right? So how are we facing with the individual? We want to talk with them. We want to have an open posture. We don't want to have our arms crossed. We want to lean forward to them. We don't want to be leaned back, but yet we still want to be relaxed, and we want to make eye contact. Could you imagine if I was giving this training and I was looking down the hallway? That would not be very engaging, would it? And we want to make responsive facial expressions. It can make the world of difference how we are engaging. We want to look for verbal and nonverbal encouragers. We really want to be mindful of how we are presenting ourselves and asking clarifying questions. We want to avoid expressing doubt or passing judgment, especially paying attention to how our face might be responding to what an individual is sharing. So much can turn an individual away from sharing more with us based on how we respond. So this engaging in that person-centered style is so important in the motivational interviewing process to make sure that they want to share more with us, that we continue to build that rapport. I'm going to play this other video from Brene Brown on empathy, because empathy is a really core component of the motivational interviewing process.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
And I see in the chat, we got a question about telephone consultation and motivational interviewing. Is it effective? Absolutely. You can use motivational interviewing by video, in person, or by telephone. I will tell you, it's going to be faster in person. It's going to be most impactful in person because you're going to be able to read those body cues. You're going to be able to give off those body cues and pick up on things a lot more beneficial and faster. However, you still can pick up on those tone inflections. It's also going to take you a little bit longer to build that rapport typically as you're working virtually, whether that be by video or by telephone. And yes, I absolutely love that video by Brene Brown. I think it really hones in on the importance of our language and how it's important to be mindful of the words that we use and how that can convey empathy. And it's so essential in motivational interviewing and how we share with individuals. And I love this acronym of OARS. If you remember nothing else from this motivational interviewing, remember OARS: open-ended questions, affirmations, reflective listening, and summaries. So we want to have open-ended questions. We want to stay away from the yes and no's. We want to really give them an opportunity to give us a longer answer and really explore and reflect amongst themselves. And we want to affirm them. We want to encourage them. We want to have reflective listening and really pay attention. We want to uncover that individual's priorities and values and draw them out and really listen to that. And we want to summarize what they shared with us. And so what might be some of those open-ended questions? So they're going to start with words like how or what or tell me about. They're going to typically go from general to specific. They're typically a lot more broad, and they require more than just that yes or no answers. However, close-ended questions, which we want to stay away from in motivational interviewing, are going to be do you, would you, how much? So we want to stay away from those questions that are very simplistic and answer responses. We want a more elongated response. So that way they're sharing more with us. That way we can explore more with them. And what is an affirmation? What is the A in OARS? We want to give those compliments. We want to acknowledge the good things. We want to focus on their strengths. We want to build rapport. However, we want to do this sincerely. We do not want to come off as fake. We don't want to really make it seem like, oh, we don't want it to come off as disingenuine. Those can really be a rapport disruptor if this doesn't seem genuine. So you want it to praise positive behaviors. We want it to not feel like, oh, that a boy, right? We want it to be true, honest feedback and affirmations. We want them to know we truly believe that they can do it, that we respect them and we acknowledge their effort and we believe in them. It's so important that we affirm them, but that we do so sincerely. I always say, if you don't believe it, don't say it. Because if you don't really believe it, it's going to come out. Whether it's your body language, your tone of voice, something. People are incredibly intuitive and they will read right through it. So be mindful of that. So I'd love for everyone to share in the chat as I continue through this training. What affirmations do you use regularly? What affirmations maybe do you tell yourself? Do you tell others? Do you tell your children? Do you tell people that you work with as a peer family support specialist? What do you use? I know one of the ones that I truly love to remind myself is that I can do hard things. I can very easily be like, I don't know, I can't do it. But if I remind myself I can do hard things, it helps. And then with other people, I'm always like, you got this. And it sounds cheesy, but I genuinely, when I say it, I know that person has it. And so it's something that is genuine for me. So I'd love for you guys to share in the chat, what affirmations do you use? And engaging, reflective listening. And I know we all think we are excellent listeners, but how many times after someone has said something to you, do you go, huh? What was that? Or you're really listening only with the intent to respond to them? We want to avoid doing that during this time. We really want to pay attention to how we're listening. We want to make sure that we are reflecting back to the individual what they're saying to us, and that we are confirming that we listen to them, that we are understanding them, and that we are promoting empathy. I'm loving these affirmations in the chat. Thank you all for sharing those. Keep them coming. And reflective listening. We want to mirror what that individual says. We want it to come off as non-threatening, and we want to help that individual develop a deeper understanding of their own motivations. And summations, right? It's what I heard you say, or can you help me make sure I understand you correctly? We want to validate their experience. We want to link the main points of the story that they shared with us. We want to recap. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on what you're doing next. So you're going to call the food box organization and you're going to pick up your new lease. And so that way we're clear on what the next steps were, right? And they know, I know, and we've got that reminder of that summary, right? And it's so important that they know they're heard, that we have those next steps summed up, and it really helps tie that whole conversation up in a nice, pretty bow. And you want to do that summarization throughout the conversation. Now, what are the methods that we can be used for motivating that change talk? Because you're like, well, what if they're not ready? What if they're still in that beginning stage? And so talking about what makes change important to them, what makes them feel confident that they can do it, what are some reasons they might want to make that change? And when they start to talk about making a change, it's important that we recognize, reinforce, and summarize that. And then planning, planning, planning. If you fail to plan, you are going to absolutely struggle, right? And so we want to ask the member for their goals. It must be important to them. It's not about our goals. It's not our plan. It is their plan, their goals. We want elicit, provide, and elicit intervention. So we want to make sure that we are encouraging them to share their information. We want to provide some feedback and then elicit some more. We want to avoid the expert trap. We do not want to be seen as, again, this is our plan or we know everything. We just want to be the source of support throughout this process. We are not the experts in their journey. They are the experts in their journey. And then we want to revisit the change as a plan when it's needed. Sometimes plans change and we have to meet that. So recognizing the priority, how ready are they to change? And there's a question, how ready are you to stop eating takeout every week, right? Importance, how important would you say it is for you to move across the country to be with your family? Confidence, how confident would you say that you are if you decided to move around and exercise more, that you could do it? So in conclusion, motivational interviewing has been validated as an effective means to make change happen. It can be used to help someone move from not thinking about change to maintaining stable and new behaviors that are positive for them. Knowing how to utilize motivational interviewing in an appropriate spirit will help recognize and resolve that cognitive dissonance and thereby increase motivation. One of the best ways to learn how to motivational interview is simply reflect on how you prefer to be treated. Do you want to be treated like a number, or do you want to be a human being that is given choice? And motivational interviewing is not about making people change. It is a way of activating their own motivations and resources for change. I do want to share some upcoming information with you guys. We do have a supervisor course that is on January 14th and the 21st from 12 to 4 with myself and a co-trainer, Paige Rogers. And so this is for individuals that supervise peer and family support specialists. And we also have a quarterly listening session on January 27th at 2 p.m. And on February 8th will be our next Lunch and Learn from 12 to 1. We'll have another raffle prize, which we'll be getting to shortly here. And we will have a very powerful speaker sharing her story about after her life after being involved in the justice system. And we did a fun play on words, life after lockup. She's going to share her story of hope and recovery and the things that really worked for her. I want to thank you all for coming. I did see in the chat some question about access to the slides and recording. I will be posting this recording by Friday this week. So be on the lookout on our Facebook and our website for that recording. I'm so excited that you all joined us today. We will have a raffle shortly, so don't leave just yet. Sonnet, are you ready for that raffle?
Yep, here we go.
All right.
All right, so are we ready?
Yes. All right, Hope Lives. So excited, Hope Lives. Well, Hope Lives, I know where you are, so I will send you your gift card, and Christopher, I'm sure you will either raffle that off or decide where that gift card should go best for that Amazon. I'm so excited that you guys won. For those of you that don't know, Hope Lives is an amazing peer-run organization that actually does a lot of focus on forensics and justice involved. They do a lot of motivational interviewing actually already in their work. I'm very glad that they joined us today. And please continue to connect with the Arizona Peer and Family Career Academy. If you want to sign up for future lunch and learns, other courses that we offer, sign up for our newsletter. There's a sign up box that pops up on our website, azpfca.org. Like us on social media. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. We have a YouTube page that we post all of our recordings on. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really hope that you enjoyed this time. I'm going to stop recording and open it up for any questions.